You know that moment when someone's entitlement gets so out of hand you have to pause and ask yourself, am I actually living in the same reality as this person? Yeah, that's where this story kicks off. And trust me, you're going to want to hang on. What Karen Morrison tried to pull at my late mother's lake cabin, man, it'll make your blood pressure spike. But what she didn't count on. I'd spent 15 years as a real estate attorney. I don't back down from bullies, especially not the ones who think they can rewrite your family's history just because they want a prettier view. So here's the setup. My name's David Chun, and 6 months ago, I lost my mom to cancer. She was everything to me. Not just a mother, but my anchor, the one person who could pull me back from the edge when the world went sideways. Mom's legacy was this old but beautiful lake cabin up in the Adirondacks. She'd bought it back in '87 after my dad passed, pouring every bit of heart she had into it. Gardens everywhere, that creaky old dock, a screened porch where I learned to play chess and, later, drink whiskey. It was her pride, her sanctuary, her place to heal. And when she passed, she left it to me, with one instruction. Keep the peace here, but never let anyone take advantage of your kindness. I swear, if only I'd known how on the nose that would be. The cabin sits on 2 gorgeous acres of waterfront, complete with a little beach and the only deep-water dock on the whole northern side. Mom loved the lake, loved being the kind of neighbor who brought zucchini bread, not lawsuits. The neighbors respected her, except for one. Enter Karen Morrison. You probably know the type. Lives 2 lots down in a glass and steel monstrosity that looks like a Bond villain's hideout. Moved in with her banker husband 5 years ago. Started acting like she owned the whole lake from day one. Mom warned me about Karen's comments. Complaints about our dock, blocking her view. Requests to trim trees that had been there longer than either of us. Snide remarks about our outdated cabin bringing down property values. Honestly, I figured after Mom died Karen would just keep to herself. You know what I mean? Boy, was I wrong. The first time Karen really showed her hand was maybe a month after the funeral. I was at the cabin, trying to pack up Mom's things, half grieving, half just walking from room to room like a ghost. It was a cold, clear morning. I'm standing on the porch, coffee in hand, lost in my own head, and here comes Karen, marching across the grass like she's about to deliver a summons. She's got on this designer athleisure that probably costs more than my mortgage, perfect hair, not a strand out of place, and that look. You know, the one rich people get when they've never been told no in their lives. David, we need to discuss the situation with this property now that Eleanor is gone, she says, zero sympathy, not even a sorry for your loss. I set down my mug, trying to keep my tone neutral. What situation would that be, Karen? She pulls out her phone, starts reading from what's obviously a script. Well, Richard and I have been the de facto stewards of this section of the lake for years, maintaining the aesthetics, covering for your mother's declining standards. That one hit me in the chest. Mom kept that place spotless, right up until the end, even when chemo left her too tired to walk up the stairs. Karen goes on. She wants to buy the cabin. Says she'll offer more than I could get on the open market, given the condition. Framing it like she's doing me a favor. I tell her, flat out, the property's not for sale, Karen. Her smile tightens. But surely you don't plan to keep it. You live in the city. This place needs someone who understands lakefront management. You get the drift. I tell her, my mother left very specific instructions about this property. Selling it to you wasn't one of them. And that's when the mask slipped. Her tone got sharper, a little desperate. You can't possibly maintain this place from New York City. Some of us have concerns about absentee owners lowering neighborhood standards. I stood up, maybe a little taller than I needed to, but hey, I'm not Mom. Conversation's over, Karen. Property stays in my family. End of story. She stormed off, but the look in her eyes told me this wasn't done. It got ugly fast. Over the next few weeks, Karen started her campaign. Complaints to the town about our dock, encroaching, calls to the county about septic issues, noise violations on weekends when I wasn't even there. Each one was baseless, but they chewed up my time, forced me to respond. Then came the real play. A petition, signed by a couple of her buddy neighbors, calling for an investigation into whether I was running a commercial business from the cabin just because I let friends stay over sometimes. It was all about pressure, hoping I'd crack and sell. At this point, I was angry, but also curious. Why was Karen pushing so hard? It wasn't just about not liking me. There had to be more. So I started digging. Public records, property surveys, anything I could get my hands on. Turns out, Karen and Richard had paid way too much for their lot, maxed out a mortgage, and had taken out a fat home equity line recently. But the kicker was the land. While their house is flashy, their access to the lake is basically blocked by a stretch of protected wetlands. They can't build the big dock or boathouse they want. But my mother's place? Deepest water on this side of the lake. Suddenly it all made sense. I started talking to other neighbors. Old-timers who remembered Mom. People Karen hadn't gotten to yet. Mrs. Patterson told me Karen had been spreading rumors for months before Mom passed, saying she was losing it, couldn't handle the property anymore. Tom Rodriguez, a few cabins down, said Karen pitched him on a lakefront modernization plan that hinged on buying my family's place for expanded access. Then the town clerk let slip that Karen had been researching property abandonment laws, basically looking for a loophole if the cabin sat empty. That's when I realized Karen's game wasn't just personal. It was calculated, businesslike, a long con to either scare me into selling or find a legal excuse to challenge my ownership. What she didn't expect was for me to know property law backward and forward. Here's where things turn. I'm in town one afternoon, talking with my mom's old real estate agent, Patricia. She mentions, almost offhand, that our lot isn't just valuable. It controls the only legal public access point for half the lake. Apparently, the original developer wrote in a necessary access easement, meaning that if another owner's water access failed, they had to go through our property, but only under terms set by us. I raced to the courthouse, pulled the plats and deeds, and, sure enough, Mom's lot was the control point. Karen's property? Legally dependent on our access. And I, as the owner, could set reasonable rules, especially for anything related to construction or commercial use. It gets better. The subdivision covenants strictly ban overdevelopment, meant to preserve the lake's character. I realized Karen's plans were dead in the water if I chose to enforce these rules. So I started planning. First step, I had a full survey done. Turns out, Karen and Richard's landscaping actually encroached into the easement area. Minor, but a technical violation. Next, I pulled permit applications for the area. And what do you know? Karen and Richard had filed, twice, to build an expanded dock and boathouse, each time denied because of the wetlands. Their new plans depended on using our access point for construction, assuming I'd roll over. Time for the showdown. I called Karen and Richard, said I wanted to discuss the property situation. They showed up with their big negotiation faces on. I handed them copies of the survey and deed, explained that not only was their lake access dependent on my property, but any development plans required my approval under the easement regulations. Karen went pale. Richard's eyes started darting over the paperwork. And by the way, I told them, I've reviewed your recent permit applications. Any construction using my access point is now restricted per the subdivision's environmental covenants. Karen tried to argue, but Richard could do the math. If I didn't grant access, their expansion plans were toast. I laid out my terms, withdraw all complaints, apologize for spreading rumors about my mother, drop the development plans. Otherwise, I'd file a complaint with the state about unlicensed property consulting, which Karen had been doing, and I'd restrict access further, plus consider legal action for harassment and defamation. Karen tried to protest. You can't just change the rules because you're mad about the business proposal. I'm not changing anything, I said. I'm enforcing the rules you ignored when you thought you could steamroll a grieving family. Richard, suddenly a realist, asked what it would take to work something out. I said I'd consider special use permits, small stuff, not commercial scale work, if they apologized and stopped the nonsense. Karen looked like she'd swallowed a lemon, but the message landed. The next morning, I found a stiff, handwritten apology in my mailbox. Later, the town clerk confirmed Karen had withdrawn every complaint. 2 weeks after that, I got a formal letter from Richard's lawyer, no more development plans, just asking for guidelines for regular maintenance work. It felt good. Not just because I'd won, but because I protected what mattered. The neighbors thanked me quietly. No one wanted another HOA-style overreach on Pine Lake. Over the next months, things calmed down. Karen stuck to herself, Richard loosened up, and even helped with the dock once or twice. The lake kept its peace. I set up a trust for the cabin, put clear guidelines in place, made sure the character my mother loved would last. Sometimes, when I'm sitting out on that old porch, I feel her presence, like she's saying, "You did good, kid." What did I learn? Bullies count on people being too tired, too polite, or too overwhelmed to fight back. They never expect someone to have the facts and backbone to say no. And sometimes, the best way to keep the peace is to show you're willing to go to war, if that's what it takes to protect what's right. So if you're ever staring down someone who thinks they can take what's yours, do your homework, stand tall, and don't blink. Bullies fold faster than you think when the law and the truth are on your side. What about you? Ever had to fight to protect what mattered? Stood your ground instead of backing down? Drop your story below. I'd love to hear it. And hey, if you think justice should always win in the end, let me know, because sometimes that's all it takes to tip the balance.